Swallowed by the corn, July 28, 2010, Mount Carroll, Illinois. At Consolidated Grain and Barge, 3 young men were cleaning the inside of a corn silo. Wyatt Whitebread, 14, Alejandro Alex Paxas, 19, and Will Piper, 20, were supposed to loosen the corn stuck to the walls. None of them wore safety harnesses. The silo's motor was still running. The corn seemed solid but behaved like quicksand. Wyatt took a few steps and within seconds sank up to his waist. Alex tried to pull him out, but the movement trapped them even more. The grain acted like a liquid, sucking their bodies downward. Will ran to the control panel to shut off the system, but by the time he returned, the sound of their screams had already vanished. The rescue took 2 hours. Their bodies were found under 6 meters of corn, close to each other. The autopsy confirmed asphyxiation due to chest compression. The weight of the grain prevented air from reaching their lungs. OSHA investigated the case and concluded that the company had violated multiple safety protocols. The site lacked proper supervision, and the shutoff system was not operational. The accident became a landmark case. Wyatt and Alex died buried by their own work, trapped inside the very food they were helping to store. Trapped behind the freezer, 2012, Council Bluffs, Iowa. For years, the disappearance of 25-year-old Larry Ellie Murillo Moncada was a local mystery. An employee at a no-frills supermarket, he left home after an argument with his parents and was never seen again. The police recorded the case, but with no leads, his name eventually faded from memory. Only in 2019, 7 years later, did the truth come to light, and it was inside the very supermarket itself. During the demolition of the building, workers noticed a strange odor coming from behind a large industrial freezer. When they removed the equipment, they found something no one expected: a mummified body trapped between the wall and the freezer. The remains were identified as Larry's. His earphones were still in place. His cell phone, no longer working, was in his pocket. Everything suggested he had climbed to the top of the shelves, perhaps to hide or rest, and accidentally fallen into the narrow gap, becoming trapped. The constant cold temperature and airflow preserved the body for years, turning what seemed like an ordinary missing person case into an unbelievable accidental death.
The Chocolate Tank,
2009, Elk County, Pennsylvania. At the Lions and Sons factory, the sweet smell of melted chocolate filled the air. It was an ordinary afternoon on the production line, where large metal tanks kept chocolate heated to 50 degrees Celsius, constantly stirred by mechanical paddles. Among the workers was Tamisha Tammy Jones, 29, responsible for monitoring the mixing level in one of the tanks. While walking along the upper platform, Tammy leaned over to check inside. Witnesses said she lost her balance and fell directly into the tank, being almost instantly pulled in by the moving agitator. Coworkers ran to shut down the equipment, but the main control panel was on another floor. For nearly 2 minutes, the system kept turning, churning the chocolate and the worker's body. When firefighters Allie managed to open the tank, the contents were still bubbling, Tammy's unrecognizable. The heat and force of the paddles had turned the accident into what investigators described as an industrially grotesque scene. The investigation concluded that there were no safety barriers or accessible emergency shutoff buttons at the site. The factory closed months later. The Frozen Woman, 2009, Vaughan, Ontario, Canada. It was a night of extreme winter cold, with temperatures nearing minus 35 degrees Celsius. In the industrial area of Vaughan, a 41-year-old employee was working alone in a frozen food warehouse. Her name was Patricia Gibbons. She had entered to check a batch of products, a quick procedure that should have taken less than 10 minutes. But when the automatic steel door closed behind her, something went wrong. The opening mechanism jammed due to internal freezing. The emergency button inside the chamber was also covered in ice, rendered useless. Patricia tried to break the glass with a fire extinguisher, but the extreme cold made the metal brittle. The motion sensors failed to detect movement since she was alone, and the security system wouldn't reactivate until the following morning. For hours, she fought against the cold. Fingernail marks were found on the walls, and her body was discovered sitting, hands covering her face, as if she had tried to shield herself until the end. When coworkers arrived for the next shift, they found the door jammed and a thin layer of frost covering the floor. Inside, the thermometer read minus 33 degrees Celsius. The forensic report listed severe hypothermia as the cause of death and cited mechanical failure in the emergency system. The company was fined for negligence and did not survive the public scandal.
Rolled in the Carpet,
2015, Zeil, Belgium. In the quiet town of Zeil, a carpet factory was working at full speed to fulfill a large international order. The constant noise of the machines and the smell of fabric scorched by friction filled the air. Among the workers was Jean-Pierre Claus, 38, responsible for supervising the rolling section, where carpets were compressed and sealed by high-pressure automatic rollers. That morning, a simple issue interrupted production. A roll of fabric had partially come loose from the machine. Jean-Pierre approached to readjust the material manually, something he had done dozens of times before. But this time, the safety sensor failed. In a sudden movement, the roller started spinning again, and the man was pulled into the system. Coworkers heard a muffled sound, followed by a metallic snap.
The machine kept running for hours, rolling meters and meters of carpet, with his body inside.
No one noticed. Only the next day did the supervisor realize that the final roll was heavier than usual and had a slight deformation on the surface. When they opened the material, they found Jean-Pierre's body sewn between the layers of fabric. The forensic report described the case as one of the most bizarre industrial accidents ever recorded in the country. The carpet, over 60 meters long, was sealed as evidence. Dissolved in lye, 2011, New Boston, Texas. At the Ormet primary aluminum plant, the sound of metal and the hiss of hot steam were part of everyday life. Among the workers was David Smith, 53, an experienced employee who had worked for more than a decade in the plant's chemical treatment sector. The environment was harsh, deep tanks filled with sodium hydroxide, used to remove impurities and polish freshly smelted aluminum. On the morning of March 29th, David was performing a routine inspection. He climbed the side ladder of one of the tanks to check a leak, but the floor was slippery from condensed steam. In an instant, his foot slipped, and he fell straight into the reservoir, a boiling mixture of caustic soda and heavy metals. Coworkers tried to rescue him using hooks and ropes, but the heat and fumes made it impossible to approach. Within minutes, the corrosive substance began reacting with fabric and skin. When they finally managed to retrieve his body, much of it had already dissolved. The chemical odor and white vapor lingered in the air for hours. The OSHA investigation identified severe safety failures. The tank had no containment barrier or non-slip railing. The case led to changes in safety protocols at several plants across the country.
The Fireworks Factory. 2019. Virudunagar, India. In the rural interior of Tamil Nadu, a small fireworks factory was running at full capacity during the height of the Indian summer. Temperatures exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, and the air was thick with magnesium and sulfur dust, an explosive combination. More than 40 workers, mostly women, were preparing cartridges and fuses inside poorly ventilated sheds. Around noon, a tiny spark, perhaps caused by the friction of a nail or a metal tool, was enough to turn the place into an inferno. The flames reached the main storage area, where hundreds of kilograms of black powder were kept. The fire spread within seconds. The workers tried to run, but the doors were locked from the outside, a common method used to prevent theft. Witnesses miles away reported a chain of explosions and a red cloud rising into the sky. The ground shook as if from an earthquake. By the time firefighters arrived, the sheds had already collapsed. Inside, the scene was indescribable. The heat had exceeded 1,200 degrees Celsius, and almost nothing was left of the structures or the bodies. The disaster left 43 dead and dozens injured. The investigation revealed that the factory was operating without a license and using expired materials. The tragedy was described by the press as the day the sky over India caught fire. Thanks for watching until the end. These were some of the most bizarre factory deaths of all time. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time!